If you're enjoying this introduction to Revit, make sure you check out the full beginner to advanced level course on my website, s15studio.com.
And what I'm going to focus on now are the modification tools for our walls, and these will also apply to our other tools as well. We can either access them in the Modify tab, or when we select our wall command, those modification tools automatically appear for us. What I'll do is I'll just draw some walls. And the first tool that I'll show you is the Align tool. So in the Modify panel here, this is our Align tool. So what that will do is it will align one wall or one object. We can apply this not only to walls, but to windows, doors, our components like our furniture, absolutely everything. The same steps apply to all. So we'll choose Align. So I want the top of this wall to align to the top of this wall. So I'll select the wall, select Align. And then first thing we do is we select the reference line that we want to align to. So I want to select the top of this, and when I do, hover over, we'll see that the line becomes dark blue. When it does, we'll just click. You'll see we get the dashed blue line, which is our reference line. Now I want to select the entity that I want to align to our reference line. So I hover over. When it becomes highlighted in blue, one click, and they then become aligned.
For the next tool, again, I'll select my wall and the Modify ribbon appears. The next tool we're going to look at, again, is in the Modify panel. We have our Offset tool. So we'll select Offset. The Offset command works very similar to the AutoCAD command. And the first, we're going to look at the numerical. So in the options bar here, we have graphical, numerical, and the first we'll look at is the numerical. So we can apply a particular offset to our wall, and as well we can create a copy when we do so. So the default value that is presented to us is 5100. For the example, I'm going to change that to 2000, press enter. Then I come back into the drawing, and when I hover over the wall, we're presented with the offset dashed line, which will display where that wall will be placed. So if I hover further to the left, there is a dashed line there, but we can't see it. So I'm just going to quickly drag that over further away so we can see it more clearly. And again, I'll select my wall, come back into the Modify panel, select Offset. There's my numerical. And because I entered in 2000 for my last dimension, 2000 is still in the offset. So when I hover over the wall to the right hand side, I get my dashed line, which is the location line of that wall. It's being presented on the right side. If I move over to the left, we see it on the left. So we choose whether we want the offset to be on the left or the right. And because the copy command is active, when we click once, we get our wall offset over 2000, and I can continue offsetting in that direction. To complete that, I can press Escape or right-click Cancel. And again, I'll select my wall back to my offset. This time I'll change it to 4000, turn off copy, hover over the right, and we've now offset the wall over to the right-hand side. As well, you'll notice that the original wall no longer exists as we have offset the wall over, and the original wall will be removed. So now we'll look at the graphical. So we'll select the wall again, come back to the offset, and we'll change over to graphical in the options bar. When we select graphical, we no longer have the choice of entering in the specified offset distance, but we still do have the option to copy. So I'll turn copy back on, and I will select the wall which I want to apply the graphical offset to. And with this option, instead of manually typing in the distance we want, we essentially draw it on our plan. So there's two ways in which we can use this. We can either first click. When we click, we initiate the offset, and we then move the cursor in the direction we want to go. And then we can enter in our distance. So if I type 3000, then our wall will offset over to the right by 3000. So that's one way in which we can do that. Again, I'll press escape. So again, selecting my wall and the offset command. So the other option we have with the graphical option is instead of manually typing in our distance, if there's a specified distance we want this wall to offset to, so for example, on the left-hand side, we have two walls here. If I want this wall to offset at the same distance of these two walls here, what I can do is select that wall and come over to the left-hand side. So if you feel like you're missing a step, we'll just come down to the command line and the command line will specify what we need to do. So what I need to do is go to the outside of that wall, one click, and then move over to the outside of the second wall, click again, and we've now offset our original wall at the same offset distance as the walls on the left-hand side. So we have the two options. We have the graphical, which we've just demonstrated, and the numerical, which is we can offset at a specified distance in our options bar. The next tool over is mirror by pick axis, and we have mirror by draw axis. So what the mirror tool does, it will reverse the position of our wall using an existing line edge or when we draw our own mirror axis. So to demonstrate this, what I want to do is I want to mirror this wall using the axis of the next wall, and I will mirror a copy to the other side. So we'll choose mirror pick axis, and when I hover over the next wall, we'll see there's our dashed line, which is our center line or location line. When I click once, the wall on the left hand side has been mirrored across that dashed line to the right hand side. The next option where we have mirror draw axis, what we do here with this one is we'll select our wall, we'll choose mirror draw axis, and this time we physically draw our mirror line. So again, we choose mirror draw axis, and just like with AutoCAD, we can draw any angle and our wall will mirror across that mirror axis, and it creates a reverse position of that component. Next one down is our move command. So with our move command, we will select it, select the component that we want to use, press enter, and now our component is entered into the move command. And then just like with AutoCAD, we click our start point and finally our end point. So anywhere on that wall, click, and I let go of the mouse. When I click again, we've moved our component. So we can either click on move in the modify panel, or we can select the component we want to move, come back to the move command, click on the wall, move it into position. So when we use this move command, with this command we're able to move it in a particular direction at a specified distance or angle. So when I choose move, select my base point, move it in the direction, and then I can manually type in the distance. Or we can follow the temporary dimensions. So we can see the temporary dimension changing. And when we get our distance, we just click to place. And again, with our temporary dimensions, you can see it's going 2500, 2600, 2700. If we want a more specific dimension, we just zoom in. And now it's going up in 20s. Like so. There is also another quick move command we can use where we just simply select it and when we hover over the component, you see there's my move option, and all we do is we click and drag. So we have two options with this. We can either use the move command of the modify panel, and when we do so, we specify a base point, which allows us to enter in a specific distance. But when we use the click and drag, essentially, it's a quick way for us to be able to move a component, and we can still use the temporary dimensions, but it's not going to be as accurate as using the actual move command in the modify panel. Next over is the copy command. So again, I'll select my wall, choose copy, And here we have a few options in our options bar. We have constrain, disjoin, and multiple. So I'm going to focus on the multiple for now. With the copy command, all we do is we first select our component, choose our copy command, then we specify a base point, move the cursor in the direction we want. We can again manually type in the distance or use the temporary dimensions. We can also add an angle if we wish, and we're able to create multiple copies of that wall. So we can apply this to all components within Revit. So we're only focusing on the wall for now, but we can do that with windows, doors, our furniture, and everything else. Again, coming back, selecting the wall in the copy command. Next, we have constrain. So when we turn constrain on and we move, we can only go at a 0 degrees or 90 degrees. This essentially is our ortho mode in AutoCAD. So we can only go 0 and 90. So just to clear up a bit of space, I'm going to delete those walls. And what I will do is I'll draw another wall connecting in. So these walls are now joined together. And so we'll select our wall. So in the copy command, we're not able to use the disjoin function at the moment, but what I'll do is I'll come back to the move command and we'll come back to the move command and I will give an example of disjoin. So when disjoin is turned off and I want to move the wall, we see that the wall will always be joined to the adjoining wall. So no matter where I try to move that wall, it essentially extends and it will always remain joined. So if I choose move and use disjoin, now when I choose to move the wall, it will actually detach itself from that main wall and we're able to move it freely. So in the copy command, we don't have access to that at the moment. So again, we'll select our wall and next over in the modify panel is our rotate tool. So we'll select rotate. And there we have our disjoin. We see that we can't use the disjoin feature because we're not attached to that wall. Again, we have our copy, so we know that when we create one, we can create multiple, and we have an angle, so we can apply the angle before we start. And next we have center of rotation, we have place and default. So I'll explain that in a few moments. So first I'm going to just rotate the wall quickly so we can understand. And when we're rotating our wall or any component, by default, it will always go to the center of the component and we are presented with the rotation line. So how we rotate is we click once, and when we do, that line is then fixed in position to our wall, and when we rotate, you'll see it pulls around and we can specify an angle or we can use the temporary dimension. And we've now rotated that wall around. And as the copy command is turned on, we've created a copy and we've not rotated the original. So with our rotation line, it is much more useful than the way we used to rotate with AutoCAD. Okay, so we'll select the wall again, choosing our rotate tool. So with the rotation line, so what we're able to do is rotate this wall again using the same angle between these two walls. So what we'll do is we'll look for that dashed blue line. When we see the center of that lower wall, we'll click. And when we come around, we can look for the center line of the next wall. And we've just created a copy of that rotation angle. And we can continue doing that around. So we'll select that and press delete. Next, I'm going to draw another line at an angle. And we're going to continue with the rotation tool. But first, I want you to place a component into our project. So we'll come over to the fourth option there. There's our component. We click on the top main icon, select, and by default, it will be your furniture desk. And we just come into the drawing, click to place, and that is our desk. And what I want to do is I want to rotate that desk to be aligned with our wall. So with using the move tool, I'm going to put the corner of the table or desk butting right up against the wall. And I now want to rotate that to be in line with the wall. So we'll select our desk, come to the rotate tool. So in the options bar, we have copy turned off because I don't want to create a copy of this desk. I want to rotate this particular desk. I don't know the angle, so I'll leave that blank. And next over is the center of rotation, which is currently set to default. So it's in the center of my desk. Right now that doesn't work for me because I want to rotate the desk to align with the wall. So I have an option where I can place and I can redefine a new rotational angle. So the rotation tool is now attached to my cursor, and I need to choose the new center point of my rotation, which is where the desk meets the wall. So I'll click to place, and when I do, there's my rotation line. So now all we need to do is just rotate the desk to line with the wall. So I want the face of the desk to meet the face of the wall. So I'll line our desk with the rotation line, click once, and we'll see it's now attached to the rotation. And I then line up with the wall. Once it comes solid blue, click again, and my desk will rotate around and be flush with the wall. And I'll just delete out those walls, and we have a nice fresh start. Next, again, I'll use my walk command and draw in just a couple of random walls. So next is the trim and extend to a corner. So this tool will trim or extend, and it will manufacture a corner for us. So we'll select our top line, and I want the tool to extend out to meet the lower wall, and the lower wall also to extend up to create a corner. So select the tool, so select the lower wall and the upper wall, and when I hover over the upper wall, you see I get a nice dashed blue line, which will give me a preview of those walls meeting, and click to complete the action. So now the walls have been extended out to meet. And with the lower walls, we can do the same thing. So if I wanted to extend this up and meet this, but what it will also do is it will trim away this other section. And what we do is we will select the walls that we want to keep. So I want to keep the top section, I want to keep the lower wall, and I want this section here to be trimmed off. So if I select the top wall, the lower wall, and I get that preview, click to place, and this section here has been trimmed away. So essentially I wanted the top wall to remain as well as the lower wall, so I came over to the right hand side. If I went to the left hand side, it will be in reverse. So if I press Ctrl Z to bring that back, and I'll do the same again, but on the left hand side. So I'll come to the top wall and the lower wall, and we'll see the right hand side has been deleted. So if I come to the right hand side of this wall, the lower wall, then the left hand side is trimmed away. So this is with the trim extend to corner. So that will do that automatically for us. If we just simply wanted to extend the walls up to extend the lower walls up to the top wall, we would come over to trim extend single element. With this tool, we first select the wall that we want to extend up to. So that's the upper wall. And once I enter that in with one click of the mouse, I then come down to the lower wall, and one click of the mouse, it'll extend that wall up. Press escape, and if I Control Z to bring that back, if I wanted to do that multiple times, I'll come over to the next one, which is trim and extend multiple elements, and again I'll choose the top wall, and then hover over the lower wall one click, hover over the lower wall one click, and I can continue working down multiple times until I finally press escape. Next up is the split element. So where we would need to use the split element could be an example here. If I want to trim and eliminate this wall here, so I just remain with this section here and this section here. If I use the trim and extend to corner, we see we can't. So what that tool will do is it trims the top wall all the way back to this section here, and we lose out this upper wall here for this left-hand side. And as well, if I do the same here, it'll remove it totally here and we lose the wall there. So the error saying it can't keep elements joined, so I'll press escape. What we can do is we can use that split element tool. So one click of the mouse and we see we have a knife or blade is now our cursor. What I can do is I can click once and we'll see the wall is split. And press escape. So there now the wall has been split into two elements. So if I use my trim tool and here, we've now removed that inner section. Press escape and Control Z to bring that back and to join it again. So if I use the split element again and do both sides, we essentially trim out that center section and I can then tidy it up. But that's one additional step that we don't want to do. And so we'll then come back into our split element tool, and in the options bar we have an option called delete inner segment. So previously when we did the split, the inner section was deleted. So if I turn that off, do the same and create two splits. If I now go to trim, we're now left with that wall by itself. I'll Control Z to bring it back. Next over is split with a gap. So we can choose that option, and down in the options bar we have joint gap and it's set to 25 mil. So when we create or use the split with a gap tool, when we click once, it'll make a gap in the wall. So I'll bring that up to 200 so it's more clear on the drawing, and one click of the mouse creates a 200 mil gap between the walls. We are limited to the size of this. I think it's 300. I'll just push it up to 400. So our limit is here. So our range is between 1.6 mil and 304.8 mil. So just keep that in mind. If you wanted to go larger, just use the split element and create the distance you want. Next over we have our pins. So pins are very useful and we will be using them quite a lot. And the reason being is when we select an element, we can quite easily click and drag it away and totally disrupt our drawing. So what we can do is we can apply a pin. And when we apply a pin, that wall can no longer be picked up, dragged, moved. As well, we can't change the dimension. So it's totally locked in position. Anything that's attached to it can still be moved until we place a pin, and that wall can no longer be moved. So when we create our project, it's essential that we pin down our walls, doors, and windows so they're not easily moved without us knowing and disrupting our layouts. To unpin those components, we just simply select it, and we can either choose the pin option here or come back to the panel. And now the walls are now free to move within the project. And below that is the delete option. So we can select our wall, choose delete, or we can use the delete key on the keyboard. I'll select those walls and delete. Next one over, we have array. So what I want you to do for this one is again bring in our desk. So once we have our desk placed in our project, I will select it, come into our modify panel and choose array. So within the array command, again, it's the same within AutoCAD, but made a lot easier for us. We have two options. First will be linear. So do we want our array to move in a linear direction, or do we want it to be radial, so in a circular motion? When they're created, do we want them to remain as groups and to be associative? what is the number of components we want in that array. And our move to is just simply how we place our array, and do we want those to be constrained. So we'll do the linear first. And yes, we want them to remain in a group. The reason we want them to remain in a group is after we finish the array, when they're in a group, it means we can select them again and we can still edit them. We can adjust the array. If we turn the group off, it means that they're no longer grouped together and we lose the array features and we can't edit the array. So how many desks do we want in our array? Let's push that up to 8. And then next we have move to. We have two options, second and last. So the last is there by default, so we'll choose that one first. So basically, there's our desk. And what this means, move to last, is when I move the desk to the last position, it will then infill in a linear pattern, and there will be a total of 8 desks. So I'll click my desk, move it to the last position, click again, and now we have a total of 8 desks in a linear pattern. As it is still in a group, we still have control of how many desks are in that array, so I can change that to 6. I can bring it up to 12, back down to 8. So we still have those options. What I want you to do is to select one of those desks and bring it down to the bottom. And we'll select the desk again, come to our array, we'll up that to 8, and I will show you now the second. So if we go to move to second, essentially all we're doing is selecting the desk, moving it to the second position, and then the array will take place after that. So one click on the desk, move to the second position, and there's our array which will follow after. Okay, so I'll select one desk, copy it over to the right hand side. So selecting my desk, coming to array. We're now going to move over to radial. We now understand group and associate, so we're going to leave that on. I'm going to change that number to 4. We have moved to second and last, so we now understand that. As well, we understand to enter in an angle. Next is center of rotation. We have place and default. So it's currently on default, so the center point of our rotation is in the center of the desk. If we wanted our array to go around the center point, we could leave it as, but we want to use place to create our own. So I'll come down to the bottom right and click to place my center of my rotation. Next, I'm going to choose the start point for my rotation. And as I move away, to place my second point, as our move to is on second. Once I place that, the following two will rotate around that center point. So there's my first, there's my second, and when I placed my second, we see it followed the same path around that center point, and as it's in a group, we can continue to add additional desks to that. So I'll come in, highlight those, and delete. And lastly, I'll draw my wall. So we'll go 2000 by 2000, 2000, and expand out to 12,000. So in the Modify tab is our Scale option. So when we're using our Scale tool, we can only apply it to certain things. So it's only available for lines, walls, images, our DWG and DXF imports, reference lines, and the positions of dimensions. I will be honest with you, I have never used this tool for anything, as I don't find there is a purpose for it really within Revit, but you may find it something for yourself. So I will demonstrate that so you have an idea of what it does, but essentially it will just scale something up like we do in AutoCAD. And the example I'm going to show you is I've drawn this alcove, which is 2 meters, 2 meters, 2 meters. And what I'll do is I'll select those walls, come to my scale. And what I need to do is to click an origin point, which will be the bottom right hand corner there. Then pulling over to the right hand side, click again, and you see we can scale up that alcove. There are easier ways of doing these simple tasks, and as I said, this is something that I've personally never used in Revit, but you may or may not find a use for it yourself. So the other examples that I can find of where to use this would be if you import an image for your title block or on your drawing, you can scale them up. But again, you can just click that image and you can actually just drag from a corner to change the size yourself. And as we don't really use scaling in Revit, we simply apply a scale to the view. It's not necessary like it is in AutoCAD. And what I want you to do is to finally just highlight those walls and delete them so we have a nice clear project to begin with, as in the next video we're going to start to look at developing our building. If you have accidentally deleted these elevation bubbles, close it down and start a fresh project so everything is back to default settings and there will be no issues for when we go to create our project.